Would you like us to rip into it? I'm Jesse Judd.
I'm Andrea Wilson.
We're presenting RMIT's OurPlace. You might be interested in why we're presenting a workplace interior. They don't seem to appear in the awards a lot, workplace fit-out. Why ARM's doing a fit-out in an office building that's not ours. It's our first one. We're interested in trying to work out what new working was. It was kind of a little bit prescient. Maybe we were oracles trying to think about new workplace when we went back to it. RMIT had a bit of a problem. This was how they were working. It could be the 1950s, it could be the 1970s. They were in cubicles, there was filing cabinets everywhere, the meeting rooms were dysfunctional. They didn't know how to get things done, so they just resorted to different coloured post-it notes, and they were in 8 different locations. So the job was to take 1,500 staff and move them into one location, but mostly to identify a new culture for working. And culture and working is a really interesting kind of a thing, I guess. When you think about workplace culture, you think about team building and other corporate bullshit, really. We really wanted to find a Melbourne culture, a societal culture, ways for people to get along and work together that was actually quite genuine. This was the site, which is the DCM's building on that corner of Swanston and Lonsdale. When you're moving 1,500 people, it takes an awful lot of talking, so lots of workshops to try and discover what that new way of working could be, which helped us enormously, but also was trying to help them change their behaviours in all sorts of ways. We learned some things through all of that, and they were things that surprised them. Most of their desks, or a lot of their desks, are empty all the time. People are working all over the place already, and of course, post-COVID, everyone's working all over the place already. Not much of their work is sole work, and when they work together, they work in small groups. They don't have meetings. So they were kind of interesting sort of facts. What it meant to us was this bottom 3 lines was the stuff we had to play with. The work points were just what they were, but how could you squeeze a whole lot of juice out of these alternative workplaces, which in our floor plate, which is a rather crude sort of figure 8 with 2 plates with a core in each of them. It's 10,000 square metres over 3 levels. It was this pink stuff that we found a lot of spice in. We tried to work up this social collaboration sort of variations on enclosed and semi-enclosed, and stacked up across the 3 levels looked something like that. To their aspirational brief, and this also came out of those workshops. Of course, it's a university, so they need to think about students, even though this isn't a student place, it's a staff place. They want to think about this administrative environment as being a kind of a catalyst for how the professional learning workplaces might be like, getting the professional, the academics out of their offices too. The other 2 on that side, or on this side for you, are fairly straightforward. Indigenous reconciliation, we wanted to do a lot more than lip service here. We wanted to find out what that could really mean for working. And we had lots of conversations with this, I guess, design partner in the end, Carolyn Briggs, who was elder in residence at RMIT at the time, but also a significant elder of the Boonwurrung clan. And I guess as kind of white people came to the first meeting with this, saying, look, we acknowledge that the Queen Victoria Hospital, which used to be on the side, was quite a tragic place for Aboriginal people. And in fact, William Barak, who's pictured there, wasn't allowed to visit his dying son there. He was excluded from this environment. And and then she said, well, that's history, but why are you taking such a black armband view of what should be an inspiring workplace, an inspiring place for new culture and new stories? And encouraged us along a kind of a place-based, and I'm talking too slowly, so I'm going to talk a lot quicker, a place-based narrative, which tried to identify a story, or 16 stories maybe, that went right through this environment. So in these 16 stories, which we'll show a glimpse of, we've really got to you've got to go and have a look because it's quite hard to talk about 10,000 square metres in 8 minutes. The stories were chaptered in the kind of the burbs, the bush and the big picture, perhaps stories we all share, very Melbourne stories.
Okay, so as you've gathered, it's an Australian narrative. There are 16 stories. The challenge really was how to produce charactered environments for each of those stories. We started actually with half a dozen carpets, linoleums, laminates and timbers, so very few for 10,000 square metres. Then I guess the challenge was, well, how do you actually make it work? So from that we developed 40 wall treatments, 50 fabrics and 10 glazing films. These are carefully curated. They're a theatre, and they're carefully balanced between narrative and workplace. Well, it's showing you 5 of these, the first one being the point of entry, and the last one, as you see here, is a nagi, that is the conclusion of the journey. Getting a little bit deeper in its meaning, because that's really important, we did a collaboration with Spacecraft and Kayala Arts. This is a shot of the Yorta Yorta community in Shepparton. They have gathered twigs from a sacred tree, they've burnt them, gathered the ashes and made it into pigment. That pigment forms the 2 artworks that are benchmarking the beginning and the end of that journey. Here's an example really of the pride of the artists that present these works. Here's a shot of the nagi. This is an image that's created by baking a piece of mud, blowing the pigment over it and creating an artwork from it. We also collaborated with the chief curator of the RMIT collection. We weren't really placing artwork as decoration, but adding and affirming the character of each space.
So student involvement was really big for RMIT, and we kind of jumped right in. We started at the same time we were doing that briefing with a design studio called It's Not Working, and interrogated the whole character of working both with interior design students and with upper pool RMIT students. It led and carried on to a whole lot of commissions, some of which you'll see here. This is a textile commission, there were graphics commissions, there were furniture commissions, there were ceramics commissions right through the whole piece. So really deep engagement with students as well.
This is the opening, the level 5. You'll see the Indigenous artwork on the side there. And again, walking down the corridor of level 5. The good room. The good room is obviously an Australian-based environment.
It's kind of that place of memory. Maybe it's grandma's house, maybe it's mum's front room.
Maybe it's Robin Boyd. A living room environment, which is also a meeting place. The park, complete with picket fence. A workplace environment. This is also in the park. This is the veranda. All of those tubes at the back, they all move with the breeze when the doors are opened out onto the balcony. This is a campsite with a custom graphic representing flame. And once again, moving down the campsite corridors.
Each of the communities or neighbourhoods have a pantry which relate to that zone they're in. So this is the campsite's pantry.
This is the outback. This is a commission piece from Rico Rennie. This is commissioned through RMIT. This is it's in the bush. It's a workbench. You'll see a lot of perforated metal here that draws on the idea of industry. Once again.
So I guess the idea is that there are hundreds of ways of working here, individual, in-group settings, and the idea is that you find the place that's most comfortable for you, your group, your activity, your frame of mind, and the time span that you might work in there. So it is activity-based working, but not just come in and book a desk, but come in and find the right environment that suits you, the time of day, time of year, culture, activity, group, and taking what was 10 departments and saying that doesn't matter anymore. Cross-department work is all about project and culture and activity and getting things happening.
The workbench, this is an example of one of the kitchen areas. All of these were built from a selection of 5 different laminates, and they were configured in a way that made them reflect the activity of the area.
Keep spanning to land on the grand finale of the workplace, which is the Naji. Which is a Boonwurrung word for to come together, to gather, to share, which happens in the void at the corner of Swanston and Lonsdale, a place for interaction, perhaps like this, or even the most casual setting for working.
So a really important lesson that we learned from our discussions was the fact that Indigenous aren't set in a pyramid. It's a place of gathering where everyone is equal. So we used the idea of the night sky. We also introduced about 50 different fabrics. They're actually selected from fabrics from all over the world that are identifiable for each culture. So the whole idea is that it's a gathering. You'll see in the background there also the artwork. That leans forward, so there's an idea of encompassing and embrace in this space.